All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Southeast Louisiana Youth Council's second annual virtual shouting program. My name is Din, and I'm joined with my fellow executive board members. We'll be asking the questions that you, the viewers, that will be typing in the chat box tonight. So please be respectful and considerate of our speakers and fellow viewers. But what you're all waiting for is our two amazing guests we have tonight. Please welcome Sam Bowler and Kyle Potts. And throughout tonight's event, you will learn who they are and what they do. So let's stop with the introductions and get straight into the program. All right, let's kick it off, Mr. Sam.
All right, hi everyone. I can't see you, but I hope you're all well. I can see, obviously, the Southeast Louisiana Youth Council leadership here, and thank you all for inviting me. I'm honored to be here. And everyone at home, I hope you're safe and sound and looking forward to a good Thanksgiving break next week. So yeah, my name is Sam Bowler, and I am a software engineer, and I have a company that provides software to cultural cities. So today I'm going to walk through sort of what programming is, what it looks like and feels like, and then talk a bit about my company. And then if you want, I can show you sort of what development looks like in the real world, and I can do some coding. You can see what that actually looks like. So I'm going to share my screen here. I do apologize for the incredibly boring slideshow that I put together here. It's just not very colorful. So it is what it is. All right, here's the first black and white slide. Software development by me. Okay, so first, what is software development? So I'm gonna break it down into three different parts. The first is programming. So programming is the process of writing code that performs an action or a set of actions. So when you program, you're looking to write code, and there's different coding languages. I know Philip knows a couple. I know Amy knows some. So there's different coding languages you can learn. Okay, what you're building is you could build something as simple as like a button that just makes a burping noise every time you touch it, right? Like you can build something as simple as that, or you can build full software. So software is a set of instructions that tells the computer what to do, when to do it, and how to do it. Okay. And then software programming is the process of writing a set of instructions that tells the computer what to do, right? So when you combine those things, you learn how to code, how to write in a language, and then that language tells computers what to do. So it's up to you as the software programmer to decide what you're going to build. So to give a bit more of a description about this, I'm going to play this little video that is helpful to just understand.
Hi.
Can you guys hear that?
Welcome to program.
Yes? Okay, cool.
If you've never learned to program before, you might be wondering what programming actually is. Well, when we write a program, we're giving the computer a series of commands that kind of look like a weird form of English. You can think of a computer as a very obedient dog, listening to your every command and doing whatever you tell it to do. So what's so cool about programming? Well, it really depends on what you think is cool. Because as it turns out, you can use programming for almost everything. Programs control robots that can take care of patients. And my favorite, robots that can roam around Mars and look for water on the surface. Programs help self-driving cars know which way to turn, which is pretty important. Programs help doctors cure diseases by processing huge amounts of medical data. Programs can be really fun games, like Doodle Jump, Angry Birds, Minecraft. Programs make it possible for Pixar to put out their awesome 3D animated movies, and for movies like Harry Potter to have such cool special effects. What's your favorite movie? I bet that a computer helped make it somehow. Programs are behind the websites and the apps that you use every day, all the time, like Google Maps and Wikipedia and YouTube. And of course, where you are now, Khan Academy. Here.
Okay, I'm going to pause there because it's a little plug for Khan Academy. Khan Academy is a great place to learn about development. But yeah, as you can see, there are sort of software is like, there's an expression called software's eating the world. Anybody ever heard that expression? I can't see everyone in the chat, obviously, but It's an expression that basically means whatever industry you're in, it's going to be touched by computers in some way. And it was spoken by this very famous venture capitalist who invested in Facebook and Instagram very early and made a bunch of money, named Andreessen Horowitz. And he said that software's eating the world. He said this 10 years ago or more, and that you should know about computers to know how the world works. So the way that I think about sort of the way that I am in the world now, after I learn how to code, I just see things differently now because I understand how stoplights work. It's all on a program. I understand how I pay with my credit card. I understand what happens behind that transaction, where the information goes. When I go on my phone, I sort of understand that applications have been built by humans to get us to perform certain actions over and over again for different purposes, right? So software is everywhere. Now there are three different parts to software. And the first is HTML. The second, which HTML gives structure and content to a website. So think of it like a skeleton of a web page. Second is CSS, which gives the web page style. And then third is JavaScript, which gives it brains. And the third part there, JavaScript, there are different languages for that third part, right? It can be Python, it could be Clojure. There's different languages for that brain part. In general, if you're dealing with a website, the first two parts are always the same. It's HTML and CSS. And then what makes that website do something interesting is the third part, the programming language. And in this case, what I program with is JavaScript. So why do you software program? Like, what's the point in all this? You know, there's I think that's the biggest question everyone should be asking themselves as they think about a career. It's like, why should I do this? And I think for me, what it comes down to, the first point is software is accessible around the world. So when I push an update to my company's website and to the software we provide, I have somebody in Egypt who can check their phone and go to the website and immediately tell me if the update went through correctly. And they can do that on their phone from a taxi cab in Egypt. So the fact that everyone has a device in their pockets now where they can immediately access information is the most powerful tool we've really ever had as humanity. So it's something that I find incredibly compelling to work with. It's just a really powerful ecosystem. So I want to be in that arena, figuring out what's happening and where things are going. Second is you can solve problems for people. So that's the biggest thing for me is I want to be solving problems for people in the work that I do. And I want those problems to be meaningful so that if they're solved, they make people's lives better. And then third, as I already said, the internet's a powerful tool, but it's up to us how it gets, like sort of what direction it goes. And I'm sure if I could see everyone who's listening in and I were to ask you if you use Instagram, you'd probably raise your hands, right? Or TikTok, right? And the second question I would have is, how much time do you spend on those applications, right? And you'd probably say, minimum maybe 5 minutes, maximum probably like 8 hours. I used to teach computer science to high schoolers, and some students would say I was on my phone for 8 hours today. It was during the summertime. And that's a crazy thing, to be on your phone for 8 hours looking at content, right? And so I think the way when we think about the web and we think about the tools that we have, the future of the internet is really up to you all to decide which direction it goes. And the current version of the internet is controlled by a few players. Facebook's a big one, Google's a big one, and they provide us tools that we use, right? And they're designed in a certain way that we use them a lot, and they become pretty addictive. So I think the question that I want to put to everyone on the call who's interested at all in sort of the way the world's going and what direction it's going to take is do you think it's healthy that we're on our phones so much, or that we're on our computers so much? Is that the way that we want to continue to develop as people? And back to the earlier point, the internet is remarkably powerful. So how can we harness that power without sort of getting into trouble with overusing it. So that's the question that I'm always asking myself as someone who's building digital tools and building software is this responsible? Am I building something that can solve a problem for people, or am I trying to make money from this over and above making my company sustainable? Okay, so let me see what I got next here. So there's certain, I want to also just break down, before I get on my soapbox of talking about the internet, I want to break down sort of the different careers you can have underneath the umbrella of software developer. So I used to work at General Electric, and I led a team of developers there. And so a team of developers is usually between 10 and 15 people. And that group of people builds a tool or builds a piece of software. And on that team, you need all the people listed here. So you need a front-end engineer, somebody who's going to build the screens. You need a back-end engineer, someone who's going to design the sort of pathways where after a user enters their information, or let's say you're keeping track of train parts, which is what the GE application did. When somebody puts in a train part and they press enter, where does that data go? Who has access to it? That's what the back-end engineer deals with. The database engineer makes sure that the 100,000 different parts for that train, all of those parts are saved in a database that's efficient. So when somebody goes to ask for a certain part description, that query or that search can go really quickly. So for example, when you're using TikTok, all of that content is saved in a database. And the reason it can be shown to you so quickly is because they've designed that database to be really efficient so that it can just serve you up stuff really quickly, and you don't have to, there's not a big loading lag time. Third or fourth is a software architect, so who sort of thinks about the whole software in general, kind of like a building architect. There's something called CI/CD, which is short for continuous integration and continuous development. That person deals with making sure that when you're ready to take your software and make it live on the web, that it's a simple process, and that in case things fail, there's a checklist. Sort of like if there's a big building, there's an architect for that building, right? There's also a security engineer or somebody who makes sure that if there's a fire drill, everyone gets out safely. Or if there's going to be another building added on, we need to make sure that all of the same processes and the same structures between the two buildings are cohesive. That's sort of what the CI/CD person does. The user experience designer, that person thinks it's a really fun job. You basically interview a bunch of people and ask them, what's the problem that you're having? And you watch them as they go through a screen. You watch where their mouse goes, or you watch where their thumb goes on an application. You figure out where was the best place to click. So all the decisions that have been made already that are so habitual to us, like the up scroll, right? Or like the swipe to close something, all of those were decisions made by a user experience designer. And we're all taking those motions to the point we're probably going to evolve into have really huge thumb muscles maybe in 10,000 years. Who knows? Then there's a security engineer and automation engineer. So the list goes on, but in general, these are sort of the buckets where people can get jobs, or people are have a job on a team. So how long does it take to become a software developer? So first I want to talk about the traditional path. Traditional path is you get an undergraduate degree in computer science. And I know for a lot of you, you're either in high school or you're maybe early in college or even middle school. I'm not quite sure which, who's listening in, but the earlier you learn this stuff, the quicker your development as a software engineer is going to go. So taking a look at the traditional path, the undergraduate major in computer science takes about 4 years. Then you can get a master's in computer science, specializing in data science or specializing in a whole bunch of different things that I listed on the previous slide. That takes about 2 years. And then your first job, you enter pretty high up because you've done those. Your sole focus in university was computer science. So you enter as a senior software developer at that level, around like probably north of 100K per year. And then from there, you sort of go up. Now, a non-traditional path is you can go to a 3 to 6 month coding boot camp that's full-time. It's very intense. Then you are usually looking for a job, but for about 6 months to a year. It could be 1 month, could be 2 weeks, could be a year. But there's a period of time where you're looking for a job. And therefore, you have to keep another job while you do that, go through those interviews. Then you get your first job and you're your junior software developer and you make between 40 and 60K. After about a year, you get promoted. The junior drops off and you're just a software developer. You usually make around 80 to 90. And then usually after 2 years, you get promoted, 2 to 3 years, depending on how quickly you're learning. You get promoted to a senior software developer, which is the same salary as north of 100K. And it really goes up from there. You can make a lot of money being a developer, both because it's very high demand, as well as if you build your own tools that you then sell, you can make a lot of money that way too. So I took the non-traditional path. I used to be a 7th grade school teacher. Then I worked for Google for a period of time and helped manage university programs for Google. And then I learned how to code because I was so sort of enthralled by the idea that to solve big problems, I wanted to know how this all worked. So I did the non-traditional path, and these were the folks I did it with in this room for 4 months. So everyone in this room now has a job making over 100K, and that was 4 years ago or 5 years ago. So and all these people came from different backgrounds. Elon on the far right with the beanie, he was coming straight from university. Ryan there with the gray shirt was, I think he was a bartender. Brian across from him by the projector was working in healthcare, I think as like a nurse's assistant. So everyone had different paths, and they just decided that this was what they wanted to do. You can see on the whiteboard there, that was us trying to do some user experience designing and figure out what screens we were going to build. So yeah, all these people went from zero to, now being senior software developers in about 5 years. And now they have, their careers are sort of blooming. So whether you want to do it in undergrad or you want to do it, there's a non-traditional path. Either way, there's a lot of need for people who know this skill. So lots of jobs out there. Good people. Okay. So next, I'm going to talk about the problem that I'm working to solve. So I have a company called Culturalist, which I'll show you in a second. And as I said, I think that the power of learning how to code is that you can solve big problems or attempt to solve them, right? So the big problem that we're attempting to solve is that there's no support infrastructure for cultural communities. So I don't know if any of you guys have artists, friends, or family members, but when COVID hit, artists were really impacted. And then there was a bunch of grants and opportunities from different organizations and the government, but there was no way to connect those grants and opportunities to the artists. There's no infrastructure. So you can think of it sort of like a road. There's no way to let all the artists know besides on Instagram or on Facebook, which is sort of a smattering of you might get it, you might not. And what that leads to is because artists are hard to find, it's hard to pay artists, right? It's hard for artists to get money that they deserve. So if you look at these two numbers, the big red dot, that's the size of the tourist spending in New Orleans in 1 year, which was 2018. So $8.7 billion was spent in New Orleans in 2018 by tourists. Now, the average annual income for musicians in New Orleans from that year was $18,000. So there's a big disconnect between what's coming into the city and what's being paid out to artists. Not to mention what I mentioned earlier around COVID, there not being the right infrastructure. So what we're focused on building is a sort of decentralized network of cultural communities where artists can be found, artists can receive notifications around grants or opportunities, organizations can post opportunities and find artists. So you can think of it sort of like we're trying to build a very niche little network that connects cities. So think of it like Craigslist, but for culture. This is what it looks like. So I'll show you that now, if I may. This is the site right here. Let's get this a little bigger. And we're currently in 13 cities and the country of Albania. So these are all the cities that we're in. And the way that we do business is that we work with an arts council. So these are all the different arts councils that we work with. We're in Connecticut and Louisiana, and then we're in Albania. So it's very much a startup, and we're just sort of beginning to get clients. But the way that we work as a software business is that we have software that we provide to an arts council. Depending on the size of the city, they pay us an annual fee for use of that software. And then in return, they get their branding on the site, and they get a dashboard that tells them all the data around their cultural community. So I'll show you New Orleans. Let's see. All right, so this is the artist directory in New Orleans. And you can just sort of scroll and find artists this way. Or you can drill down and say, I want to see visual artists. I want to see painters. You can even further drill down and say, I want to see a certain zip code or a certain ethnicity. And then you click on an artist. So each artist gets this profile where they have a bio. I'll open another one here. They have a gallery of work. We've designed it so that every page is sort of searchable on Google, so that this becomes sort of a miniature website for the artist. You can contact them, you can pay them. So it's sort of tools. Oops, sorry. So it's tools for the artist, and on the back end, the arts councils get a dashboard that tells them how many artists are here. And then as an artist, you can also search for opportunities. So you can say, I want to see grants for visual artists. And then these are all the grants for visual artists right now. And you can even further say for a certain race or ethnicity, for a certain age, right? And then you can find out about these different opportunities. And different organizations can post different opportunities. So if we go back, we can see, like, for example, find one. I think this one. So this is an opportunity for a juried exhibit, and this was posted by the North Central Louisiana Arts Council. So our goal is to build a network where all these different organizations and artists can be collaborating and sharing resources, and that exists all across the country and the world. So that's the vision, is that every city has a culturalist, and artists are using it, tourists are using it to directly find the people that make the culture in those places. Yeah, that's my presentation, y'all. And would love to field any questions you've got. And if I miss anything that I should go into, Philip or Amy, please let me know. So I took an even more non-traditional path than everyone else in that room I showed you. I'm going to stop sharing. And because I ended up I don't know. I think when you first learn, you think you know everything and you think you can get any job. And then you quickly realize that people have been studying this for, half your life. And you're sort of quickly humbled. But I think it really makes a difference the first job you get. So when you get a job, you learn how to code the non-traditional way, go through the boot camp, you get your first job. If you have a good mentor, it's amazing because I found, and I'm not sure quite why yet, but I found that in the software development world, there are very few jerks. Like there are a couple who like think that they know everything, right? And then if you ask them a question, they're just mean to you. But for the most part, I'd say like 98% of people are like really generous and understand that it's hard and frustrating at times, because programming can be very frustrating because you're not sure what's wrong. And it's brand new. You can't see the bugs sometimes. So people want to help. And I found that whether or not, like in your first job, it's important when you're getting that first job to understand like what the mentorship is like and to ask that question, like, will I have mentorship and who do I have access to in this office? Because that makes a really big difference for how your year goes as you learn. I had a friend who just finished a coding boot camp and got a job making, I think, $50K. And that was 8 months ago. Had a really good mentor at a company called Level Set in New Orleans. And then was in this junior position for about 6 months and then was being mentored, really loved it because there was no pressure on him as the developer. He just was sort of being guided and able to learn at a good pace. And then he was promoted to developer after about 6 months. And then LevelSet just got bought for $500 million. And because he'd been given a position as developer, he got had already equity in the business. So he got a big chunk of money after having been at the job for about a year. So there's things like that can happen in software that are still crazy to me to hear about, where like you somehow come into, a $40,000 bonus after being at a job for a year, just randomly, so it's rare, but it's happening. Oh, we can't hear you, Alex.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Philip, do you have any more questions? If not, then I'll ask some questions from the chat.
No, go ahead.
All right. So the first question we have for you is: does your company have a physical location, or is it all virtual?
It's all virtual. We've got a team of 4. A person in Baton Rouge, a person in Indiana, a person in Kentucky, and then I'm in Toronto. And we hop on a Zoom every day at 9. We do a check-in. How's everybody doing? What are you working on? Anything blocking you? Great. No? Awesome. And then we get back to work.
All right, perfect. I'll go with the next one. So just like a more general question for you, what are the pros and cons with the job? Like how satisfied would you say you are, or like are there any other downsides with your job that you've experienced in the past few years?
Yeah, I think you need to know yourself for a job like this. I think you need to know, like, do you like spending a lot of time by a computer? That's the first question, and the answer for me on that is no. Which is why, like, I'm interested in building a company, and so I had to do a lot of development early on, but we've just hired our first developer. So I'm interested in building a company that solves a problem. I think software is an incredibly powerful way to get there. But other people deeply love writing code and love the problem solving and love the way that the immediate feedback you get. I have that feeling a lot of the time, but not to the degree that other developers I know have it. So you have to know yourself, and do you want to does that get you going? Are you excited by the idea of like solving problems and writing code and, thinking through how to build like really, really good tools for people that need them and what problems do they have? So I think that's the first part of that answer. The second part is know what's important to you. So like, it sounds related to the first one, but what I mean is like, if you want to make a bunch of money, great, know that about yourself, you know. If you want to be working with people, you know that. If you want to combine the two somehow, think about that. If you love like the process of making food for people and serving it and like the feeling you get from that, like I think just like knowing and exploring what makes you feel good and knowing that going in, as you sort of think through your majors and think through sort of internships or jobs you want to try out, be listening, I think, to like what is making me come alive, what's making me feel really good and excited about being alive, because this whole thing of being alive is pretty preposterous and amazing. So like let's do the best we can with it, you know.
Someone else asked, earlier in the presentation, you described a user experience designer, and they were wondering if this is a position that you can apply for or if it's something that you're promoted to.
You apply. So it's something that I think it's my favorite part of the job for me is basically, can I share my screen one more time, Philip? Okay. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. If I can.
Just while you're getting that set up, didn't you say earlier you're gonna give a demonstration or something?
Yes, I did. Yeah. Okay, let me see. All right, so can you guys see this? All right, so a user experience designer makes these screens. Okay, so this is what I made this week. This is a dashboard for the Louisiana Office of Cultural Development, where they can see the whole state, and then they can zoom in. They can see how many artists live in the state, how many organizations there are. And so the design of this view is entirely up to you as the designer, right? You have a blank screen in front of you, and you have to think through what does the executive director and her team at the state office, what do they want to accomplish? And in the case of this dashboard, they want to be able to see who the artists are, or rather, how many there are in each region, and break that down. So then you sort of think through these different problems. You can drill it down into a certain region, right? You can then drill down and just see a grid, and then you can see a visualization. So like this was the process of developing this was like interviewing the client, asking them what they need, what they want. And then this is the first version of this screen. So I sent this to the client. They're going to review it, get back to me on what they want to add or change. And then we'll build that into the software that they are paying for. So this is sort of how the process works for developing anything, is you sort of come up with it. It's the very first step of the development process is a user experience designer designing those screens and getting feedback from the client. And it's a job that you train for. And it's like there's lots of courses you can take online, but there's also like there's a lot of creativity, and obviously the aesthetics are really important. So it's a really fun part of the development process. Oh, and then Philip, you told me to do a demo here.
Yeah, just like quick coding demo, just so people maybe get like a little feel of what it's like.
Yeah. Okay. So. This toolbar. All right, so this does this look okay on your screens? Yeah. All right, so let me get this going here. So this is, if you look at this code, think of this like a Google Drive, where like all these different files do different things, okay? So the first thing I'm gonna do is get this going in a demo environment. So what I'm doing is I'm gonna run some processes to make sure the code compiles. So you basically put the code together, put all the different parts together. That's the script I just ran, okay? And now I'm going to run a script called serve, which spins up a little server and allows me to see basically see what I'm doing and see it live. But so I'm not like pushing anything to production. Production is the website you just saw, right? So this is called local host, where I'm able to play around and make big changes and just see how things go. So let me make a change here and show you guys what that looks like. So, all right, I'm just gonna do. So this. All right. This is an HTML file, okay? And I'm gonna add just a paragraph tag to it, or rather an H1 tag that says, hello, Southeast Louisiana Youth Council. Okay, let's see if this shows up. Okay, didn't show up. So let's see what's going on. So this is what it looks like. You're basically like, okay, I typed something in, I'm not seeing it, what's wrong? You open up what's called the console to figure out, basically to fetch the new code. Here we go. So I wrote this into the directory page, right? And if I were to push this up to production, it would be there, and that would be a big problem, because all the clients would be like, why we care about the Southeast Louisiana Youth Council, but like we don't necessarily want to have them shout it out on the. So it's pretty much like that, y'all. When you're developing, you're like building something, you're checking it. Okay, does that look good? No. Is it doing what I'm supposed to do? No. Go back, fix it. You're tweaking. It's constantly sort of tweaking and building. And then when you're happy with it, you push it up to what's called a test environment. So I have another environment called test.culturals.com, which is the next stage of my development process. So after I do it in local, I push it to test. And then this is a more stable environment. I test it all out. If I find bugs, I go back to local, change them there, and push it back up the chain. And the final end of the chain is production. That's when it goes to the client. And we do about 2 pushes to production per month. So we make changes, we make fixes, and we push them up twice a month.
Wow, that is so fascinating. All right, so our next question in the chat is, knowing what you know now, is there anything that you would change in the process of you getting to where you are? So is there anything that you would change?
Yes, lots. So much. I feel like, okay, so if anyone has an idea they want to work on, what I would suggest you do is go through this process first. This is a program called Sketch. It's $100. I think they have a student discount. I'm sure it's like maybe 45, but it's really powerful to be able to make like basically UI screens. Okay. So if I were doing this over, what I would do is I would get on Sketch. I would spend, a week watching YouTube videos about how to do it. It's not that hard. And then I would make the entire application, or like the visible parts of it, the meaningful parts of the application. And then I would print it out at Kinko's, and I would have it in like on my person at all times, and I'd just be showing it to people and be like, would you use this? Like, do you find value in this? How would you use this? And then you can just turn the page and they can go to the different views, right? And you could learn so much that way without writing one line of code. So I think in terms of building a business, there's a lot that I would do differently that I've since learned. The very first thing being, get to clarity around the problem you're solving as soon as you can, and make sure that there is both. Make sure you care enough about the problem to really go for it. I care deeply about equity and access. So like the reason I really dove into this problem was because the majority of the people who create culture in New Orleans specifically are people of color, and yet the people who get paid out are primarily white. So there's a big issue with equity and access when it comes to tourism and sort of cultural economy. And I can go deep on that problem all day, every day. You know, I know that about myself. If it was a problem of like, am I going to sell, you know, little TikTok button stickers? Like, I don't care about that. So it would be much harder for me to like struggle through the problem of building something if I didn't care about the problem. So you have to know about the problem and care about it. So first thing is I would just go really low tech to build something. The second is I would know that it's going to take twice as long as you think, and to be really kind to yourself. And then third, I would get really good habits early on. So like you're eating well, you're sleeping a lot. Shout out to Amy, who likes to take naps. You're like, you know, you're sort of taking care of yourself. You're calling friends. You know, there was a period of like a year where I didn't call any friends because I was like so convinced I could like build this company and like launch it and go and be like, you know, rich and famous in a year. It didn't happen. And then you have to call those friends back and be like, I'm sorry. I wasn't thinking straight, you know? So things take time, and be patient with yourself and the process.
All right, Mr. Sam, I've got a question for you here that I think many people going into computer science always try and like ask themselves once. So it's related to programming languages. So comp sci is a really open field. There's a lot of different routes to it. And so there's a lot of different languages, right? And each language has many different purposes. So in your opinion, is there one language that is really demanding in like the developing world that you would suggest every programmer learn no matter what?
I think if I were going into it now, I would try, and you like love computers, you know that about yourself, you love it. I would go into learning about like basically a decentralized like Selenium, which like allows you to write code for the blockchain. Because I think that's the future of like, the things happening in the blockchain right now are like the Wild West. It's like the internet, early days of the internet. And it makes the internet proper look like a Ross Dress for Less. And like, it's like super orderly, and, you know, the stuff happening with like NFTs and like these DAOs. And if you get into that early, you can like, it's like going to be a playground for you, and you're going to be in very high demand. So I would recommend, if you love tech and you love computer programming, I would focus on learning like blockchain development.
Okay, so the next question is, what were some of the biggest challenges you had to overcome in your career?
Oh man, I just start to cry. Let me think. It's just, it can get really frustrating. I'm sure Amy and Philip can tell you this. Because I taught them how to part of what they've learned so far. It can be really frustrating. So it can be something where you're like, you just feel really alone and really frustrated, and you can't solve the problem. And then you're on Stack Overflow, which is a website that other developers go to post the problems they're having. And you're like trying to scroll through and figure out what issue you're having. And it comes down to like that you didn't update one package, that like one tiny fraction of what you're trying to do wasn't the right version. And there's a period of years that it takes to just become familiar with those kind of errors and those kind of issues. So there have been moments in my career where I was like, this is really hard. And I this is taking a long time. So yeah, I think there's if I think it really depends on you. Like I've taken a risk by building a company, and so it's going to be, I feel that risk in different ways. I feel doubt, I feel frustration, I also feel hope and excitement. Like it really depends on what the level of risk you're willing to take. And it's not. There's always going to be like, a crap sandwich with anything you do. So like just be ready for like that, because it's inevitable no matter what field you go into. Not the most eloquent answer, but
alrighty, so I think that's all the questions we have in the chat. If we have any final questions amongst us, go ahead, guys. Go for it.
I've got one more. Okay, so you were talking about being a front end, back end database engineer. So when you're becoming a developer, do you choose just one of those specific tasks to focus on, or do you do multiple of them, and then when you're on a project, you get assigned like certain tasks to focus on while others do something else?
Great question. There's what's called a full stack engineer. So you do the front end and you do the back end, and that's what you aspire to be. If you prefer the front end, then you sort of gravitate there, or if you prefer the back end, you gravitate there. Depending on the size of the team, you might have to do it all. So like, for example, on Culturalist, like the developer that I hired is a full stack developer. So he does front end and he does back end. So I think that's something to think about too, is like, if you want to be on a small team and you like to touch all the parts, then know that too. And like be looking for startups, or because startups still have to pay well, because you're in demand as a developer. So you can find the right team size, versus if you just know you love the front end stuff or the back end stuff, you can also look for that and apply to those jobs. The jobs usually ask for, whether it's full stack or front end or back end or whatever it is.
Does anyone else here have any other questions they want to ask? Because Mr. Sam, he actually has to go in a few, so probably have time for one more question. Right. Guess not.
Oh, okay. So I do have one more question. So, I'm sorry, I kind of forgot if you mentioned this, but when did you start like coding? Like in middle school, high school, college?
Forgot to mention that. Sorry, Alex. I didn't touch code until no, this is well after college. I was let me think. I graduated college in 2010, and I didn't start coding until 2015.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like I don't want to get too personal and like take your time, but I'm at a position where I would like to learn how to code, but I also think it's kind of too late for me because I'm a senior. But you telling me that kind of like pushes me like, oh, okay, I can do this.
Oh, wait. Whoever told you it's too late is bonkers. No way. You'd be ahead of the game. Honestly.
All right. Thank you.
If you just know how it works, like if you know how a software program works, the ones you're using, and like know what the different calls are happening and what's like when data is being fetched. If you just know that, you'll know more than 99% of people who just like sort of mindlessly use these tools like we all do, but don't know how to use them, how they work. Rather, it's not too late by a mile.
I kind of just want to talk a little bit since but yeah, Alex, is literally you can learn it anytime. I think once you pick up on a language, all the concepts are pretty similar when you try to learn other languages. So it's honestly, as long as you have a stepping stool into coding and get a basic knowledge of how it all works. A lot of the coding languages just start to piece each other's there's like different nuances, like different syntax, different ways how they work. But if you like start now, and then you'll thank yourself in the future for it. So, and yeah.
Do you have Spark?
Yeah, do Operation Spark. Yeah, no. Amy and I did Operation Spark. We both, for me personally, that was my first stepping stool into coding, and so, I learned JavaScript. I've been doing it now for about a year, and it's really helped with just learning other languages, and it's just really great. So, yeah, it's 6:55. Let's try not to hold Mr. Sam up. He has a place to go to. So, do you have any closing remarks that you want to give?
You want to just keep going for another hour? No, I want to hear a little bit. I have to jump to my niece's birthday party, so I apologize I can't stick around. I think the closing remarks is just I think everyone's being told coding is like this, like code, learn how to code, learn how to code, learn how to code. Like, is that sort of being messaged to y'all as like, yeah. I don't think that's the right messaging. I think you should learn how to code if you like love computers and you love building things on computers. And at this point, you should know that about yourself, or just like sort of start to ask that question, like, do I feel good doing this? Because the world needs lots of like community organizers and doctors and healers, and like the world needs lots of different types of people. So I think there's like the trend of like society, or like it's really a smaller sect of society. It's like probably just really like parents concerned with like their children's employment, or like the people like pushing the narratives around these different things. Also like what jobs are out there, et cetera. But software is really powerful. And I hope there's a new generation of people that step up and decide we don't want, the internet to look like a Ross Dress for Less run by like 3 different companies that steal our attention for money. And that it should be weird and like interesting and creative. I hope that's what happens, but I think that when you approach thinking about what you want to do, think about what makes you feel alive, and then go from there.
All right, thanks a lot, Mr. Sam. I know you're a really busy person. The fact that you took time out of your day to even do this is really great.
My pleasure.
Yeah, so then again, thank you again. I just want to say you're a great teacher, and I hope you continue on doing great things with your business, and yeah.
So, thank you. You were a great student. So are you. And I'm sure everyone else was great students too. Okay. Sorry I can't stick around.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you, Mr. Sam.
Thank you, Mr. Sam.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. All right, everybody. Next up, we have Mr. Kyle Potts, and he's a lawyer, and he will now give his presentation.
Well, again, thank y'all for having me. My name is Kyle Potts, and I'm going to be the other end of the spectrum. I'm the guy that gets made fun of when it comes to computers. I fix a lot of my problems by turning my computer off and turning it back on. So I'm fortunate enough in my office to have smart people like you who can help us with our computers, and we have an IT department here. But again, good evening. Thank you for having me. I appreciate y'all giving me the opportunity to be here, and I hope I can tell you a little bit about the process of getting through law school and becoming a lawyer, things after law school. But I am a father of a student who is going to graduate this school year, so I'm still a bit in touch with what y'all have had to endure and go through the last couple of years, the challenges, and now planning for the future. I hope I can provide you with a little bit of information that you might find helpful. If you already plan to go to law school, if you're thinking about it, or ultimately if you decide not to go, I hope I can just, give you something that you can pick up on here today and use and think about. But first, let me tell you a little bit about myself. And the reason for that is, you kind of want to know a little bit about who is speaking to you, because if you talk to a different lawyer or another person, they're going to have probably some different thoughts and different perspectives. So all the things that I'm going to express are my own thoughts or points for you to consider. So that's one of the first lawyer disclaimers is that what you're about to hear are my opinions and thoughts and my opinions and thoughts alone. I hope that you have the opportunity to speak to other attorneys if this is a field you're interested in. or maybe spend some time in a law office as a filing clerk to be in that environment. I think in early access, early introduction to that is always helpful. So let me begin with, I was born and raised. I hope my accent's not too bad. I was born and raised in North Central Texas. I am a proud Texan. I graduated from Garland High School in 1992, graduated from the University of Texas at Arlington in 1996 with the very popular degree of Bachelor of Arts in History with a minor in business. I took the LSAT my last year of college. I was looking to get out of Texas for a minute because I'd spent my whole life there. Got accepted to Loyola School of Law in New Orleans. Felt it was a very good school, close enough to Texas, so I was close enough to home and the family. Started law school in August of 96, again at Loyola in New Orleans. Graduated with my Juris Doctor degree in May of 99. The plan was to go back to Texas, but my wife and I fell in love with New Orleans. And I think that's something you might hear a good bit about, is about people coming from out of state who come here and go to college or law school. Sometimes this city can grab you, and we do love it. So I sat for the Louisiana bar in July of 99. At the time, that was a 3-day written examination, and then I was sworn in as a Louisiana attorney in October of 99. So having lived here for over 25 years now, I am a proud Louisianian, but I still hold my Texas card. So I like to say maybe I have dual citizenship. I started working for a small firm after law school, a small firm here in New Orleans, doing primarily what I would call defense, casualty defense work. I had a degree. I had a little bit of experience because during law school, I spent a little bit of time at the New Orleans District Attorney's Office during the summer. I also got some experience clerking for a couple of civil law firms here in New Orleans. So you come out of law school, you got the degree, you got a little bit of experience, but you certainly don't know how to practice law. So I had a very experienced attorney mentor at that law firm who showed me the ropes, so to speak, where I started preparing pleadings and motions in cases, later started taking depositions that matched my experience level at that time. And as I gained experience, started getting more opportunities to go to court, try a case before a judge, or what we call a bench trial, and continued to work there for 1.5 years. I then had the opportunity to move over to Adams and Reese, a larger firm, where I've been now for 20 plus years. So I've been practicing law for 22 years. Adams and Reese we're a mid-sized, what we call regional law firm. We've got 19 offices along the Gulf South. We also have an office in Washington, D.C., because we do a good bit of governmental relations and lobbying work. Have about 270 attorneys across our footprint, and our largest office is New Orleans. And the New Orleans office is primarily involved in casualty defense, but we do have a transaction group, bankruptcy, and many other areas that the attorneys practice here. We've got a website. I know we were just talking about programming computers, so we do have an Adams and Reese website. If you want to spend any more time going on there, looking at any of the lawyers or looking at my bio, although I got to admit I got to update my bio, so don't hold that against me too much. So I started out defending those minor cases, like I told you, minor accidents, slips, trips, and falls in restaurants or other businesses. And as I gained more experience, I'd handle more, serious matters, such as where people claimed they were hurt by certain products or chemicals. So generally, I am the guy on the other side of the case from the attorneys that you see on TV or on the billboards. I'm the attorney who's on the other side of them. My area of practice grew when I started working at Adams and Reese, and I started defending maritime matters. And maritime, that could range from claims involving, offshore personal injuries on platforms, vessels hitting other structures, and dealing also with United States Coast Guard investigations. So for a while, I was the maritime team leader here, and that's the main reason why I need to update my bio, because I am no longer the maritime team leader here at the office. Over the years, I've traveled through the country, taking depositions, conducting discovery in multi-district pharmaceutical cases, been involved in trials in Texas where we are able to enroll in Texas courts for the purpose of handling only that case along with local counsel involving, serious personal injury claims. And so even though I'm licensed in Louisiana, we call it pro hoc vice, where we can enroll in another case, and as long as we have local counsel, we can handle a case in other states. So my practice now, it still focuses on defense and not as much in the maritime area. It's ranges from minor injury claims, but mainly what some would call high exposure cases involving serious injury and sometimes, unfortunately, death cases. I deal with a lot of trucking accidents, 18-wheelers. My clients are often insurance companies. They're insureds, so the insureds who buy the insurance policy or have the insurance coverage, such as those trucking companies and other businesses. So I'll try to end, or at one point in here, I don't have as great of a PowerPoint or the demonstratives, but I do want to, I'll show you a little bit from a deposition and talk to you about a case just to give you a feel, and we can talk about that case a little bit more. But basically, my practice, what happens most of the time is a lawsuit gets filed, which is a petition for damages. A client notifies us of the suit. They ask us to defend. We evaluate it. We determine how we're going to respond to the suit in answering or preparing pre-answer motions that we call exceptions to see if there's a chance of early dismissals of the cases. From that point, the case kind of moves forward. And sometimes we have, even before a suit gets filed, we know about an incident and we're already interviewing witnesses and we're already doing our investigation into the case. But if I don't get the suit or the claim until it's actually been filed, then we'll go interview witnesses, we'll investigate, we'll do what's called discovery, where we go take depositions and we sit people in a room and we swear them in just like, they're in the court of law. And we take those depositions and do discovery and prepare the case. It can be taking the plaintiff's deposition, physicians that have treated them, any witnesses, law enforcement, obtaining documents, but it's all for the purpose of trying to move in the case to resolution, whether that's through settlement or trial, or what we call, with settlement, alternative dispute resolution. So, again, many of you may already know this. I'm not sure of the grade levels or your level of interest in practicing law, but, full disclosure is that not a lot of cases go to trial. You'll see the statistics that most of the cases do settle without going to trial. So if you're interested in trials and being in the courtroom, unless you do family law or plaintiff personal injury or criminal, you're not going to see as many trials. We do see them, but not as many as some in different practices. So with all of you, I think, Philip, everybody's pretty much in high school. Is that right? Okay. So after high school, unless you're a whiz kid, you've got 4 years of undergrad and then 3 years of law school. So why do that to yourselves? And what can you do through college and maybe a little bit of high school left to prepare yourself or to decide if you want to go to law school? So I've got over 30 years now of high school, college, law school, and practice experience that, I don't know if I can synthesize for you in another 10 minutes. But you got a long road ahead of you if this is the path you want to take. But I can tell you it goes by extremely fast. I cannot believe how quickly 22 years has gone by with the practice of law. So again, I hope you can take something away from this that assists you in whatever path you pursue. So why do people become lawyers? I was involved a good bit in the recruiting of attorneys here at the office for a while. I no longer do that. But, myself getting ready and trying to determine what I wanted to do, and you interview a bunch of law students, you'll hear a lot of these about, why do people want to go to law school? And asking you that question now If we were in a classroom, the way law school works often is with the Socratic method, but since I can't, call on anybody, one of the first things you hear is that it's to help others. I want to go to law school to help others. And I'll tell you, that's at the end of the day, that's what we all do. That's our job. Our job is to help somebody who has a problem and try to get them the best result that we can. But when you hear really to help others, you're thinking more about people who, involved with a particular cause or a particular organization, an environmental issue or a particular political cause. But at the end of the day, lawyering is helping others. Another reason why people go, it's to provide a living for yourself and your family. It's a profession. It's an interesting and fascinating one. It's not easy at times. It's stressful. But if you manage it, handle the demanding job, and keep everything in perspective, it is rewarding. You learn great, another reason, you learn great skills, whether you end up being a lawyer or doing something else. A law school education is valuable no matter what you end up doing. Going through 3 years of law school, what you learn, the people you deal with, the method of teaching, I think it's an excellent education to get no matter what you end up doing. And people do use law degrees for things besides law. I know many people who have done that. So learning how to think like a lawyer, how to communicate, the writing skills, managing conflicts, those are all valuable in any profession, I think. Another reason people get into it, it kind of goes to the first one, but it's passion. People are passionate about something. How many times have you seen a news story on TV about someone's family member wrongly convicted, or they know somebody that was hurt by a particular product or a particular issue hurt a family? And these people go to law school, and that's what motivated them to go to law school and to make a change. Or you get a degree in history and you don't know what else to do. But these are all, various reasons. Whatever your reason is, you just need to go into it with your eyes wide open. My motivation was certainly, wanting the better life. I grew up with a family where nobody really went to college. We had food, we had a roof over our head, but there were hard times. And I was looking for something where maybe I'd have a life where things would be a little easier. And so family members had me thinking early in school about doing something as a profession and going to college. And, it's one of those things where law stuck in my head. And so starting in middle school, I started taking speech classes. I was not comfortable with getting up and speaking in public. And I don't know that anybody is ever 100% comfortable and at ease with standing up and talking to any group. But taking that class, it led to, I was in high school debate. It just helps you build a little bit of confidence and comfort that even though if you might mess up, life goes on. But you're developing the skills and the skill set to just talk to people, get up in a room, and just feel comfortable with it. And I think that was one of the things that did help me, having that debate in high school, debated in college, the public speaking programs that I was in, I think did give me a little bit of an advantage when I got to law school, because I was able to get involved in a moot court program where I already knew, some of the tricks of making, a presentation or making an argument. So I think those advocacy programs are good. I've certainly met people who are blessed and they have a gift where they can just stand up and make beautiful speeches. Where every time they get up, they can command a room. I have to work at it. I've had to work at it. And so if you're someone who is not comfortable with getting up and speaking or making a presentation to a large group or getting in front of a microphone, if I can do it, you can do it. You just have to do it with practice and with time and gain that comfort and that confidence. So the pathway to law school, whether you want to go to law school or if it hits you in the middle of college, your preparation started even before you knew it. Whether you're in some type of speech class, you're talking to people in your classroom, you're in study groups, your communication skills, you're already developing the skills that you need for law school and to become a lawyer. Grades are important. Good study habits are important to get a good college, to go to a good college, and obviously good grades in college and a good LSAT score are important for law school. Extracurricular activities obviously go well for getting into law school. The LSAT, I think, is still graded, from the score of 120 to 180. The median score is usually 151 to 152. So obviously, the closer you get to 180, along with a good GPA, the more the options you have, scholarships that you get. So, good grades, good study habits, work on the LSAT. That's kind of taking some things, in college, starting to get ready and to prepare yourself. I certainly found law school to be difficult and challenging, but not impossible. Where you may be able to get away on your own brain power in high school and to some extent college, that's not going to work in law school. You have to do the reading. You've got to do the work. You've got to put in the time to study and prepare. So you got to dedicate yourself to law school. And I'm not saying you can't have a good time, because I certainly did in New Orleans. But if you fall behind and you don't keep up with the lectures, it can create a problem. So, I think we've all had the class where maybe we didn't do everything we needed to do, but we still got away with the A. I would highly recommend that you not do that in law school, that you need to do the reading, you need to do the work, you need to prepare, because the exam or the grade associated in law school is usually just one exam at the end of the semester, and that's your grade. So you're essentially studying for your final from day one of your class. So you've got to approach it that way and make sure you keep up and read. And I guarantee if you do that, you'll thank yourself, because I know a lot of people who tried to cram a semester of work into a night before an exam, and it's not a good way to get through law school. Law school gives you the knowledge, and it teaches you to think like a lawyer. But the practice is another level. So you certainly learn a lot and you learn some tools, but again, until you're in the practice of law, you don't really know how to do it. And I'm still learning. 22 years later, there are things that I'm still learning. And I think there are attorneys who are practiced longer than me that are still learning. So what do you need in this profession, and what do we do kind of day in and day out? Unfortunately, I spend a lot of time reading and writing, and you have to have excellent writing skills to draft pleadings, to draft memos to clients, to persuade people. And so if you do not enjoy a lot of reading and writing, this may not be for you. But if you're interested, and you're interested in various aspects of the law, or trying to get to the root of a problem, or you've got a client that has a real interesting issue and you can't wait to help them get the result they want, you got to do a lot of reading and a lot of writing. Case research. We do a lot of case research, whether it's cases or legislation. When I first started, I was at the end of when we still used books. You had to go research all your cases in books. You had to do what we called shepherdize, which is in looking at another set of books to make sure that the law you're looking at is still good law. Now it's all at our fingertips, and it's wonderful. It's wonderful to be able to, and it's computer programmers and whoever else came up with these wonderful online, systems where every bit of law is at my fingertips, and I just need to use the right search terms to find it. I don't think, for the most part, anybody uses books anymore. But the problem with all the online and using the computer and having that access is people expect a quicker response, and they expect you to get back to them very quickly. So learning how to use the online research is very important because people expect you to get them an answer very quickly. Obviously, we do a lot of speaking, whether it's in court, a presentation to a client, an argument before an appellate court, whether that's the state appellate court, or we actually have one of the federal appellate courts here in New Orleans, the Fifth Circuit. So they're have to be able to communicate, and being able to communicate clearly and effectively, I think, is a must. You got to connect and deal with people. You make connections. There are some people that you may not necessarily get along with, but you got to find a way to get along with them. You got to find a way to work together. So sometimes that means maybe not saying what you want to say or saying things a certain way, but you got to know how to deal with different people at different times. We are advocates. We have a responsibility to zealously represent our clients. And oftentimes someone's life is being directly impacted. And I think a lot of times in our profession, certain lawyers don't understand that it's not about me and it's not about the other lawyer. It's about this person who has an issue. And even when they're on the other side of me and somebody really has a problem, I'm not trying to make it worse for them. So we do try to work together sometimes in other cases, but where we think we have a defense, we're certainly going to, pursue that and zealously represent our clients. So it's a profession where you're constantly learning. The practice changes through legislation, court decisions, technology, societal issues. It's ever changing. But to me, that's what keeps it interesting, is that it does change. And there's always something new, different, interesting to counterbalance the pressure, the stress of the job, in working with clients and opposing counsel. So you have to be able to adapt a little bit. But in terms of, I did want to just see if I can show y'all a little something. One of the more interesting things I've dealt with lately are some cases where accidents, and you may have seen this in the news, we're dealing with the staging. People have staged accidents to try to make, basically what are fraudulent claims. So I've been involved in a couple of these cases. So the deposition video I'm about to show you, you won't be able to get all the context because it's a 2-hour deposition. And I'm going to try to show you a couple of minutes of it. The bottom line is that this was a case where 5 people in a car claimed that my tractor trailer came over into their lane, hit their car, and they claimed that they were injured in the accident. So they brought suit against my client. I did a lot of discovery, worked the case up, and something didn't smell right about it. We got, not all the details that I think I can go through with you here today, but we found out information where we just didn't think that what we were being told about this accident by the plaintiffs was truthful. So we do our work, we do our preparation, and we go take a deposition. And this is a deposition of Miss Aisha Thompson, one of the plaintiffs. And I just want to play you some of the questions and answers. This will just be a couple of minutes, and forgive me, I'm not great at this share screen thing. I'm going to move through the deposition a little bit, and I hope everybody can hear it okay. Give me 1 second here.
My sister Erica said that, they were going to ride on my nephew, which is her son, Darnell. So I was like, well, I'm going to take a ride. I ain't doing nothing else. I'll ride with y'all. So that's how it worked.
Mr. Potts, really quick. The audio is a little bit finicky on our ends, so if you could maybe describe maybe what
I'm sorry, the audio's not coming through.
it's a little finicky. It's really hard to hear. If you
Okay.
could maybe describe what
Yeah,
she's
let me-
talking about and
So let me just stop that. What I was trying to do is just give you an example of where we prepare, we investigate, we go take the plaintiff deposition, where she testifies she was in the car. She testifies that the truck hit them, that they pulled over onto the shoulder of the road, that at no point did they ever get in front of the tractor trailer, hit their brakes, and try to stop the vehicle to claim that the tractor had hit them. So we do that investigation back in 2019. It becomes a case that the FBI ends up investigating, and this came out where Miss Thompson pled guilty. And when you read this, you can see that there have been a bunch of others, that have pled. And when you read what the government has done here, you'll see that Thompson was treated, despite not being in the RAV4 at the time of the staged accident, and that in these depositions, including but not limited to, that in these depositions, who was driving and extending it, but basically that they provided false testimony. So this is, it's not something we run into every day, where we pick up a case, we investigate it, and what they're telling us isn't true. The accident didn't happen. And now, because not only did the accident not happen the way they say it did, and we were able to demonstrate that, she's now facing a criminal charge that she's pled guilty to, and now we'll see what her sentence is. But we feel very good about that result, although I hate anybody going to jail, but we saved our client time, money, and expense. And so that's just kind of part of what we do and how we represent, several of our clients. In terms of, getting your way and moving through college into law school, I wanted to say a couple of things about that don't think you have to major in pre-law. Don't think that you have to become a legal scholar in undergrad. If you have an interest in business, get a business degree and go to law school with a business degree. If you have an interest in engineering, go get an engineering degree. You could end up being a patent lawyer. If you got an interest in construction, architecture, go get that degree and become a construction lawyer. Any degree can get you into law school. And so look at something you're interested in. Whatever you're interested in, maybe an area of practice. But, I do want to mention the caveat again that with market changes, we had a downturn in 08, 09 that impacted the number of hires and impacted people in the legal community just as in any other profession. So you got to be able to adapt. So even though you may be planning to come out and be a patent lawyer, you might have to be a criminal defense attorney for a little bit. But again, the skill set you learn in law school can allow you to do that. I think this is a smart group of people here. You all know there's numerous areas of law, whether you go into government, family law, general litigation, kind of like what I do, criminal law, lobbying. There's just the areas of law and the specialization now is vast. So you can look into and basically become an expert, whether in law school or your first year or 20 years later, you can take on a new area of law and become an expert at it. With the resources that you all have, the research and the questions that you can probably answer for yourselves, you have the ability to look into things and to make probably more informed and better decisions about what you want to do, where you want to go, if you do or don't want to practice. I just think the technology now is amazing. The number of resources out there are amazing for you to look at. So there's plenty of, things like that you can review and look at. If I had it to do over again, you got to take an LSAT prep course. I had no idea when I took the LSAT I don't know, 25 years ago, that there were prep courses. So I think that's very important, is to get ready for the LSAT. Most law schools are not cheap. And I think this is a big issue that any law student is going to face. Everybody wants to go, to a great law school. You want to get a scholarship or financial need-based money. But sometimes that doesn't happen, and you have to take out loans. Many people come out with student loans and have that debt, and they feel burdened by it, and it can be daunting. But if you go into it with your eyes wide open and understand that it's an investment in yourself, understand how you have to repay the loans, and inform yourself just like you would anything else, it'll be fine. But I can't emphasize enough to you, just evaluate your desire to go to law school, to practice law, or to use your degree for something else, with the understanding of the financial commitment you're going to make. And I know, being in high school, it's hard to look that 5-6 years down the road, but you need to understand that it is a financial commitment. Again, if you're interested in it, do take some courses in college. There are Supreme Court courses, different areas of law courses. Get involved in debate, public speaking, mock government, mock trial, appellate advocacy trials. I know a lot of people in law that are excellent lawyers who are in theater, and that skill set of being an actor or actress, they perform very well in a courtroom. So I think theater is actually a good background to have. I've got some fun things that I'll throw at you, but I can do that while we answer questions. So I appreciate, this opportunity. I'm sorry y'all weren't able to hear that deposition, and get the full effect of it. But basically, I was just showing you a witness that was lying to me, and we knew it. So let me answer some questions along the way, and then the other little facts I can kind of throw in while I answer some questions.
Mr. Potts, I'll kick off the questions for you tonight. So the first question we've got for you, and we know there's a little bit of confidentiality associated with this, right. But do you think you could tell us a little bit about the weirdest or the most interesting case that you've either heard of or dealt with yourself?
Well, look, when you do this, for any lawyer who does this for more than 5, 10, 15, 20 years, you have stories. And that's what makes the career interesting, intriguing, and it keeps you going, so to speak. Unfortunately, from the cases you win are at the front of your mind. The verdicts, the $0 verdicts are at the front of your mind. But the interesting cases, unfortunately, are sometimes the ones that aren't great and that are often sad. And so, I don't want to give you too many details, but, it's, and this is where you have to be very gentle, where you're dealing with a case where, a mother, unfortunately, is seriously injured by an officer who, didn't respond properly to a house call, and what happened, in a case like that, where, the homeowner's expecting to be safe, not to have any issue when a police officer shows up, and an accidental discharge of a weapon occurs, and how that impacts that mom and her children and her family. Those are the things that kind of stick with you. It's the real life impact. But again, currently, right now, if y'all read the articles or see the news, this right now, the staging of the accidents, having over 40 indictments, The number of cases that we've had, I've just never thought that we would be involved in such a ring of cases where people were crazy enough to purposely turn their vehicle into a tractor trailer, putting their life in jeopardy to make a claim. And I think it says a lot about what we're going through in our society. But it's sad, but yet I feel it's very rewarding when you can find out that people aren't telling you the truth. So that would be the two things, is that the some of the cases that are so hard and difficult that you just can't help but be compassionate. And you got to have compassion and empathy in this profession as well. But it's also the satisfaction of making sure that people who are not telling the truth, because I do think this job is about getting to the truth, and that people who are not telling the truth don't use the system improperly.
I kind of personally wanted to ask a question. So I know law school, there like a lot of professors ask pretty arbitrary questions, sort of philosophical questions, like what if you push someone off a bridge, or like what was your probably favorite I guess debate moment, or debate topic that you had in law school?
It was actually, I think, in a mediation arbitration class, and it was eye-opening, because it was about how, and again, about how to, different approaches, different backgrounds, and how that can impact how people come to a settlement conference trying to resolve a matter. But, we do have different upbringings and different ways we think. And, I kind of thought it was more cut and dry. I was wrong. And so people, I can admit when I thought it was just a very easy, here are the facts, here are the numbers, but you really too have to consider people's backgrounds, their sensitivities, your differences. And it's definitely opened my mind up more. So, it was a good debate that opened my mind.
Thank you for answering that. The next question we have is from the chat. Is lawyering an individual career, or does it mostly involve teams? So to clarify, I believe this question, it could be asking two separate questions, but I'll just say it out both. One, do you mainly work on cases by yourself, or do you just work with a group of lawyers at your firm? And the second kind of question you can interpret this as is, do you mainly just work with lawyers, or do you work with other professions too? Like when you study a case, do you ask physicians hey, describe the physics between this car crash or something like that? So yeah.
So yes to all of the above. There are cases that I handle on my own. Just based on my years of experience, there are certain cases that I have no problem I'm going to handle this case. There are other cases where time-wise, maybe I need some help. I get an associate to do some research, prepare pleadings, and that associate will work with me on a case. There are certainly the larger cases. I'm going to use BP as an example, the BP oil spill as an example, where you cannot possibly handle that type of litigation on your own. So there will be, a team of attorneys that will have assigned tasks on different parts of that litigation. So that's more case specific. As a firm, we're structured with different groups, teams, practice groups, where there are it's the bankruptcy section, general litigation, commercial transactions, the maritime group, and then we cross over into some of those. You had Sam on earlier. If I had some type of copyright or computer programming case where I needed some expertise, I would do my best to retain a guy like Sam. I would prefer that he have some type of trial experience already testifying as an expert, but we routinely retain experts in cases to, because I am definitely not a doctor. So if I've got a case where somebody's claiming a disc injury, we retain a doctor so that they can look at him or her. They can help me understand what the injury is or may not be. And then we certainly retain other types of experts like economists to compute, lost earnings or issues relating to medical expenses. So it's very rare in a case that if it progresses a little bit more down the line, that you're not retaining some type of expert.
Okay, our next question in the chat, was there ever a case where coming to a settlement was difficult because the two parties were very far apart in what they wanted? And if so, how did you deal with that?
Happens all the time. Every single case is the other side is way high and I'm way low. And that's how the negotiation always starts. I wish it didn't, but that's the way negotiation goes. The way you get there and try to come to a meeting of the minds is, number one, you prepare. You got to have the ammunition to provide to the other side to use that in order to get them down. But I do think a very important part of it is the mediator. So when you go to, usually when you try to resolve a case, you agree on a certain mediator, and they have experience and training, and they're usually lawyers themselves who can go back and forth between the parties, help you negotiate, point out some certain things about each other's cases, and talk directly to the clients, to give another point of view. So it's a combination of preparation. And what I mean is, not only do you have to get ready with those pieces of information, but you've got to prepare your client on what to expect and what the issues are and what money level we're going to be talking about. And also knowing that you have a good mediator, or if it's a mediator that you haven't used before, that you're researching that mediator. So it's research, preparation in many areas.
All right, so the next question in our chat is, typically, on average, how long do you usually work on cases?
So there certainly are certain cases that resolve fairly quickly, and that's where there's just no dispute about what happened, or we find out quickly that we're not liable, so but that doesn't happen all that often. Most of your cases, particularly in the civil court, criminal court obviously goes much faster because of the constitutional issues, even though COVID has impacted that. But in civil cases, I would say it's the exception for a case to be resolved within a year of filing. Most cases go beyond a year. And I'm actually finding that over the last couple of years, and with COVID, that cases are going well beyond that. I have cases that are 5-6 years old. I don't think it's necessarily good for a case to go on that long, but they take on a life of their own. So for the most part, I'm usually on a case for well over a year, if not more.
All right, so my next question is a bit of a lighter question, and if you're comfortable sharing, so is there a figure in history, like someone whose ideals that you're supportive of, or someone who just really inspired you to take this path that you want to share with us?
Well, I mean, the inspiration for the path was, like I was telling you about a couple of family members. It's my grandparents. They had great values. They were Depression era people who wanted, a better life, and so they definitely started banging in my head early and often about college and having a profession, and not the the long hours and of the blue collar work that my granddad was doing. But, so he was very influential. But, if you ever read anything that Abraham Lincoln wrote or study Lincoln, he was a pretty good lawyer before his political achievement. And, it's Lincoln who said, and basically, I know I'm not going to get this exactly right, but, if you can't come together and resolve a case, something's not right. He believes that the parties need to work together and come to a resolution. And oftentimes that's where we end up, because you never know what 6 or 12 jurors are going to do or what a judge may decide. So when you have the opportunity, to kind of control the outcome, I think Lincoln is definitely a guy I've read and who his I guess philosophy, so to speak, has impacted me.
Yeah, you mentioned how COVID slowed things down a lot earlier. Maybe go into how being a lawyer during COVID has been. I highly doubt it's been easy. So.
Yeah, I mean the first 6 months of it were difficult because everything essentially shut down, and then the courts, they certainly slowed down. Then there was a backlog of not only criminal cases but civil cases, and so it changed. You had to redo all your scheduling orders, and so it was a tough time. And then we all came around. We're almost basically able to do our job from the kitchen table. So much of what we do is on the computer. We're paperless for the most part, and it's not my personal, because I'm a little bit gray and old. I like when I'm talking to people or deposing witnesses, I'd rather be in the room with them. I get a better feel. But we do a lot now of depositions by Zoom, Microsoft Teams, and we do a lot of hearings by Zoom, which, it's unusual to be sitting at your desk arguing. So it's been strange, but I think like most other things, we've learned some things from COVID about the working remotely, not having to travel to certain places to do depositions or attend court. So I think there's going to be something down the road about, more people, practicing law from their kitchen table and, not as much office space being used.
All right, so I have 2 questions. One of them is going to be a quick question. This is from the chat. Have you ever said no to taking a case?
Well, yeah, and it's because of conflicts mainly. We represent certain clients. A certain issue will come in, or a different client, and we, our code of professional conduct, rules of professional responsibility, we cannot take on certain clients and cases that conflict with existing clients. So we do say no a little bit more often than you may think because of conflicts. Now, has there been a case because of a moral or, a personal feeling? No. If a case comes in and we can handle it, and the firm approves the case opening, and whether it's me or anybody else in the firm, again, we represent clients, and that's our job.
Okay, thank you. So my second question, so like those questions where people ask doctors like, hey, is this like medical show accurate? I wanted to get your take on any like law shows, like just Law and Order, just like those type of shows. I just want to know, like, do you think those are accurate, or like what TV shows are accurate?
They're not.
Okay.
And the thing that drives us all crazy is for people who, come to us and, maybe don't exactly know how the process works. You don't get a case from beginning to end that finishes in an hour. And not every case just goes smoothly right to trial every time in front of a judge or jury. That just, so they leave out so much of the, the behind the scenes work of what goes into a case that you just don't understand until you do it. The preparation it takes to be ready to go depose that witness who may or may not have seen something. So from a time component and where they question the critical witness for 3 minutes, I don't know if any of y'all been following the Rittenhouse matter, but if you watched any of that trial, tell me any witness where they were done questioning them in 3 minutes versus 2 days. So, but I will tell you, there's, a movie, I don't know if any of y'all have seen it. It's an old movie. It's probably made in 1973, 74, The Paper Chase. Watch The Paper Chase. That's a good movie, about the first year of law school. Read 1L by Scott Turow. That gives you some good information there. If you ask any lawyer what is their favorite, I say any, I'm being very, very broad. What's their favorite lawyer movie? And I think 8 out of 10 times they're going to say My Cousin Vinny. And it's, obviously it's funny. It's not necessarily accurate, but they do get some things right about the process of a trial. Herman Munster, who plays the judge, is terrific. And you will come across judges like him. You will come across lawyers like Vinny. So My Cousin Vinny is probably the favorite movie of many lawyers.
So I just have a final question to end off. So I know you touched on this throughout, but I just wanted to know, since you've been in this career for a while now, how is a typical work-life balance for you?
It varies, and you do have to have, right now I know, at least I hope none of y'all are married or have a kid. But when you're married and have a kid, it's challenging, especially a newborn. But, when you go through law school with that person or they understand, what you're going through, it works out fine, but you just get the way you balance it is you just can't be away all the time. There are times where you just have to figure out a way not to be in another state for a week taking depositions. And that doesn't happen all the time. And I think with experience, I find that you're putting in the work a little bit more when you're a younger associate because you're learning and it takes more time to get things done. I think as you get older, you become a little more efficient, a few more things, and, you're able to get home 5, 6 o'clock and then maybe you've got the night where you're here till 7 because you got to file something the next morning. So I find that in my practice, it's a pretty good balance. I certainly know people who put in a lot more, particularly like solo practitioners. That's one of the things I love about being in a firm our size is that there's good support, there's plenty of resources, and there's a lot of knowledge here, a lot of institutional knowledge.
All right, thanks a lot, Mr. Kyle.
Well, I wish you all the best in your academic pursuits, no matter what you do, whether it's law school or anything else. Good luck to you.
Do you have any just final remarks you want to give to everyone watching?
That's pretty much it. Just, if you're going down this path, thinking about this path, just do it with your eyes open, and don't just go to law school to go to law school. Make sure you're going there for a reason, and that it's something that you want to do degree wise. Maybe you end up doing something else, but make sure it's an education that you want to do, because it's a commitment. It's a commitment. So again, I appreciate the time here. I hope I've at least given y'all something to use, think about, and I know all of you will do great. And again, wish you the best. And we can always use, no matter what the situation is, the economy, the market, we can always use diligent, ethical, passionate, conscientious attorneys. So come on.
All right, thanks a lot, Mr. Kyle. So that does wrap it up for the SOIC virtual shouting program. Be sure to check out tomorrow's event, where we will have Daniel Cogler, who has a PhD in computer science, and that will be tomorrow's event. And be sure to check out our past virtual shouting program event, which also has amazing people like Mr. Kyle and Mr. Sam. We do have a law session video if you're really interested into law, so go check that one out. And we also have one on petroleum engineering and I think anesthesiology, so go check those out on the YouTube channel. And again, Mr. Kyle, thanks a lot. And I know you're a really busy guy, is hopefully, we didn't take too much time, so.
Not at all. I hope it was of benefit.
All right, and I would like to say, everyone, have a great night, and I hope to see y'all tomorrow. Bye.
Good night.